We have Mr. Alan Dershowitz from the podcast The Dersh Show with us now. Alan, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good. So I don't know if I want to hear your opinion or whether I'm going to like it or not, but I know you're going to give me an honest view of the Constitution, and that's important because you have demonstrated not being a political player. You actually stand with the Constitution, and I so appreciate that. As I'm looking at the Texas filing with the Supreme Court, it seems to me that it creates tension between the Bush v. Gore verdict and whether that was proper or not, and does it apply now today? Is that even in the ballpark?
Well, remember the Supreme Court said don't ever cite Bush versus Gore. That was a case for one day and one election only, so it's not supposed to be cited for precedent. Look, I think that Bush versus Gore was much easier. One state, 600 votes. Imagine a situation where the shoe were on the other foot, where, say, Biden had lost the election to Trump by one state, and that state were corrupt, and other states sued that state. I think my liberal Democrat colleagues would be saying, what a great creative lawsuit. Wow, we're behind it. Larry Tribe would be arguing the case enthusiastically, saying, of course, the state of New York has standing to challenge Florida or whatever. But now the shoe is on a different foot. And so all my academic colleagues are saying the lawsuit is silly, it's crazy. It's not crazy. The Constitution says a state can sue another state. And if the votes of one state, Texas, have been diluted by corruption in another state, and if, in fact, the president should be candidate X rather than candidate Y, I do think that there is standing by one state to challenge. The problem with the lawsuit are numbers, evidence, and timing, not abstract theoretical constitutional issues. It's the 2-minute warning. There are no timeouts left, and they're on their own 10-yard line, and they have to produce evidence, not just allegations that show that there are enough challenged votes that would make a difference in the outcome of the election. And that's a burden that's very hard to meet.
Okay, so I think we agree. I mean, me personally, I have my feelings about this election and what happened, but it doesn't matter what my feelings are. We need facts. But shouldn't they be allowed the ability to present those facts to the Supreme Court? And if they don't stand up, then they don't stand up.
I agree, but the question is timing. How quickly can they do it? The Constitution doesn't designate December 14th, but legislation designates the 14th as the day in which the electors vote. And is there really enough time between today and the 14th for the Supreme Court to listen and hear and evaluate the evidence? One of the criticisms, of course, has been that the courts have said, you should have brought these lawsuits earlier. You should have brought them before the election if there were challenges to things that you knew were going to happen, like mail-in ballots, or immediately after the election.
Wait. But didn't they, Alan? I mean, I remember people challenging, wait a minute, you can't change these at the last minute. You can't, you've got to go through the legislature. Those challenges were there.
In Pennsylvania. And the Pennsylvania lawsuit, I predict, will be won. The question is, are there enough disputed votes in Pennsylvania? All the votes that were counted and received after Election Day, I believe, will be discounted by the United States Supreme Court. We've certainly gotten that message from Justice Alito's early decision. The question is, are there enough such votes to overcome the 80,000 or so margin of victory that Biden seems to have won in Pennsylvania? That's the question.
Should the Supreme Court, and this is an academic question because I don't know if anybody can prove anything, and we can't operate on what we feel. We have to have proof. Right. But if they could produce, either side could produce evidence that this was a stolen election, should the Supreme Court rule even if it meant, sorry, you're going to have to flip the score? And I know that would cause all kinds of, it may even cause civil war. Shouldn't the Supreme Court stand with the rule of law and the Constitution, no matter the consequence, or not?
Yes, I think so. But the Supreme Court has to have credibility. As Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist Papers, it has neither sword nor purse. It lives or dies by its credibility. And if it's a partisan decision and it's perceived as a partisan decision, a lot of Americans won't accept it. So I think they will not try to change the outcome of the election unless it's demonstrably clear from both
Correct.
a legal and a factual point of view. The burden is very, very heavy on those who would change an election. Remember, before we desegregated America, the Supreme Court waited until it had a 9-0 opinion. They were 7-2 a few years earlier, but Chief Justice Warren said, no, if you're going to desegregate the South, you need to have unanimity. You can't give the other side any basis for saying this is not the law. And I think the same thing would be true if you wanted to reverse an election. It would have to be an overwhelming decision at the Supreme Court, not along partisan lines.
I think that's why, we were just talking about it, that even if you accept it and you say, let's look at it, the decision comes out and Clarence Thomas says no, Amy Coney Barrett says no, then it has credibility. But if you don't accept it and at least hear it, you feel like, something, justice isn't being done. Hear it and then unite on the answer.
I agree with that. I think the American public has the right to know, not only for this election, but for future elections, because,
Yes.
Look, we've seen so many challenged elections in the 21st century, starting with 2000. There were complaints about the 2016 election. We're going to get more complaints as more people vote by mail and by computer. We're going to see more challenges. So, I've suggested establishing for the future a voter integrity panel, VIP, consisting of VIPs, former justices, presidents of universities, ministers, priests, and rabbis, you name it, people who are objective and nonpartisan, and all complaints before the election, during the election, after the election, can be brought to them for a factual assessment. So we, the public, can know the truth. Today, with the exception of my podcast and your show, nobody knows where to go to get the truth. You can't get it on most mainstream media. You're going to get bias. And so I think we need to have a trusted institution that could tell us what's going on with the counting and with the election.
I don't know any institution that could withstand the societal push towards control of everything. I think that's a longer discussion. Real quick, I've got about 20 seconds. Is it going to be heard by the Supreme Court or not?
I wish I knew. I think the Supreme Court should write something and say something. They shouldn't simply dismiss and leave it to us to speculate.
Thank you very much, Alan Dershowitz.